So, good morning. I don't know, I can almost believe, but not quite, that this is our 30th time together. That seems dramatic. This is number 30, and our topic today is virtue and resilience. But I've given you a handout. Actually, Barbara has, but I'd like to read the first paragraph to start us. This is the prayer that God gave me to, I think, as a summary. I really didn't know that that's what I was doing, or that's what God was doing with my hand to do this, but this is what came out. So I'd like to read the first paragraph now and the final two at the end. So, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. And good morning, sisters. I didn't greet you. I'm sorry. Lord, heal me today. Help me abandon the self the world tells me I am, and finally take on your holy self as my soul identity. That could also be spelled S-O-U-L. Help me surrender the tired and weary and doomed self, this world self, and graduate to a new level of living solely with you and from you. Help me transcend to your newness, where I am free, where I am but your instrument of love and loving. Here I have no need to judge or condemn or criticize or demand. Here there is no loss, no turmoil, no depression, and no shadows and compulsions. Here is the place of new existence, only peace and trust and hope and forgiveness and wisdom and all goodness. Here I am in your awe, wonder, and delight. Help me stay the course with this choice. I am here only to help. I am your instrument. Amen. Pardon me, I don't know if I'm trying to record this because I promised recording to a few people, but somehow it's not wanting me to. Oops. Let's try this again. Oh, it is recording. Good. All right, virtue and resilience. Why do we need resilience? We need resilience now more than ever as our complex world becomes ever more so every day. Have you noticed? To say the world is complex is kind of like saying that water is wet. I mean, who doesn't know that? Yet the consequences of this ever more entangling conundrum of complexity invades us in rather stealthy ways. We need a better way of dealing with this intruder. That's the intruder of complexity. Complexity, by the way, is the shadow of the virtue of simplicity. Recently, I realized that I've almost become addicted to this data gathering machine I carry with me everywhere, kind of like a third hand. Yes, it's my smart dumb phone. I subject my mind to the daily avalanche of the data that it spews at me. And what is all this information doing to my personality, to my soul, to my heart? I ask myself what can help me to persevere through this data tsunami. High on the list is the virtue of resilience. The American Psychological Association, this august group, says, quote, resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, or thoughts. It means bouncing back from difficult experiences. I never thought I'd see anything by the American Psychological Association that said it used the words bouncing back. But I kind of like it. But it doesn't sound very professional. Other descriptions of resilience revolve around a singular strength. Here it is. The capacity to recover from wounds to our body, confusion of our minds, and or insults to the spirit, and grow ever better as a result. So it's not like resilience isn't just withstanding all this stuff. It's actually using all this stuff to allow us to be better. Now that's a pretty tall order, but resilience is really our, the swing that we're holding on to here. While the process of maturation, otherwise known as the aging process, that we call aging is certainly, while it's not a disease, it is generally regarded as a process of diminishment that occurs over time. One of the virtues central to our response to these diminishments of any sort, and really at any stage, is resilience. As we move in this direction, then, we gradually move towards the spiritual, mental, and emotional condition that we call, and I call, agelessness. So what is agelessness? Agelessness is the understanding of and the capacity to live life with little reference to our chronological age. We are not blind to age, certainly, but we can adopt a belief that age does not determine anything other than perhaps the number of times that you have traveled around the sun on this spaceship called Earth. Figure that one out. As we move closer to this life condition of agelessness, we gradually move to a more spiritual point of view that gives us a clearer reality. Yes, of course, our body experiences the effects of age, but our emotional, mental, and especially our spiritual life aspects are not defined by age as they were perhaps in our younger years. Agelessness, in my estimation, is aligned with the Christian tradition of self-surrender, sometimes called self-abandonment. That encourages us all to live a life of virtue that moves us onto a more spiritually elevated plane. Aging, in my estimation, is God's plan to help us gradually forfeit this material plane and peacefully adopt a more spiritual life with Christ. When we look at aging from that perspective, aging is really a spiritual journey. And then when we extend that, as Christians, our life is a spiritual journey. All of this it requires immense energy, opening ourselves to grace in a qualitatively different way than before. And that's what resilience is all about. Opening our lives to this new quality of spiritual presence in us as never before. So as we mature, our spirituality deepens. It's supposed to. And as we gradually embrace the virtue of resilience with a new expectance and an elevated gratitude. So here are 10 of 100 indicators that I wrote to help make the notion of agelessness more available and operative in my own life. Here's just 10. I won't give you the whole 100. So what is agelessness or aging, and our reaction to aging, our response to aging, which I'm referring to as agelessness? What does it teach us? What are we supposed to learn from all of this? Well, that our peace of mind and heart is not external, but internal. That's number one. Number two, that you must always have dreams. That you function best when you have a personal cause, a passion, a goal, or a purpose that is bigger than you. Number four, to have fun, to engage in activities that rejuvenate your body, stimulate your mind, and of course enrich your soul. Number five, to welcome change into your life. Number six, to experience wonder, to seek delight, and to live in awe. That's a big one. Awe, wonder, and delight. What brings you to wonder? Not wonder in a cognitive sense, but wonder like, oh my goodness, it's so wonderful. What brings you to awe? Think about that. What brings me to awe? Probably looking at my wife brings me to awe. Number seven, agelessness teaches me to give up all of my burdens to God. Number eight, agelessness teaches me the importance of cultivating a confidant relationship. What is a confidant? A person with whom you can share everything in a confidential way and know that it's not going to be broadcast to the world. A confidant. When you're looking into the eyes of a confidant, you're looking into your own peace of mind and heart in a sense of tranquility. Number nine, agelessness teaches us that that maturation is a curriculum to learn how to best cultivate emotional peace, spiritual vitality, and life vibrancy. This aging is a curriculum. It's really a holy curriculum of moving us forward. And agelessness teaches us that this aging time is a time to give back. So we are to be servants, instruments of God. So that's just a taste. Why am I talking about agelessness? Because agelessness requires a lot of resilience. So what are the underpinnings of resilience? When you look deeper into the virtue of resilience, you'll discover a wide array of capacities, capabilities, and a host of virtues that correlate with the 6 functions of your personality. Do you remember those 6 functions? We talked about those a long time ago, but they keep popping back. So the first function of our personality is the believing function, as you know. And so resilience teaches us embracing the most fortifying beliefs, attitudes, and assumptions that enable you to carry on in the face of all these unknowns of living. The virtue, I think, that connects most clearly with that goal would be hope. The absolute assurance that the power of love can never be eclipsed. The perceiving function, the next function, is the ability to view the events of our life through a new lens. When you view a negative experience as a challenge rather than as a potential defeat, you then dig deep into your own personal strengths. This would probably be most compacted into the virtue of vision. Whose eyes are you looking through? You think, well, it's my own. As we move forward in our growth towards becoming a true Christian, we're asking to look through the eyes of Christ. Very different perspective. The third function is the thinking function, which could be seen with resilience. Resilience in the third function would be the capacity to uncover the essential meaning of all your life experiences. Now that's a big mouthful. The virtue I chose that would be connected, I think, most clearly to that is the virtue of steadfastness. We're staying the course by moving forward in the course. We're not jumping off the track, is what we're saying here. We're steadfast. The feeling function is the fourth function, the capacity to forge vital and enduring bonds with others. Being part of a community expands the sense that I am not alone. And the virtue that probably gives us that more than any is trust. I can trust you. I think I've mentioned here before that I see trust as a queen virtue, in that it's so nurturing, and without trust, where are we? The deciding function, number 5, as it relates to resilience, is the capacity to develop plans and goals that best allow you to flourish in an increasingly complex and ever more confounding world. Have you noticed? And I think the virtue that helps us with that more than anything is the virtue of patience. And finally, the acting function of our personality gives us resolve, to be resolute, and it's the capacity to keep focused on your goals, your willingness to resist worldly temptations, and to defend, without being bellicose, internally defend your own ideals. Taking action then gives you a sense of control, although not all control, over your life circumstances. But it gives you choice control. We have a choice on how we are going to look at any adversities that come along with us. That's so easy for me to sit here and say. It's pretty hard to do. And without resilience, the virtue of resilience, you ain't going to do it at all. The virtue, I think, here is the virtue of inspiration. We are to be inspired. We seek inspiration. I'm collecting all these topics because they're trying to move to a crescendo here. This next topic is hardiness. What do you think of when you think of hardiness? If a person is hardy, what does that mean? Strong, and strong enough to be able to move through something. They are hardy, you know. If you want a mountain guide, you want one who's pretty hardy. Anyway, this two psychologists, Blesner and Ramsey, which I quote here, they define resilience using these three concepts, which is interesting. And the first concept is recovery. The ability to rebound to or get over a distressing experience. Get beyond it. I'm now beyond it. You're never beyond it, really, I mean, in the sense that you forget it, but you're beyond the emotional, psychological, and spiritual insults, perhaps, that this experience has perpetrated upon you. The second one these psychologists come up with is the notion of resistance, which they mean the capacity to sustain a commitment. How many of us have made New Year's resolutions, and by about the 10th of January, we kind of forgot them? You know? We don't keep the commitment. We don't have, they're calling it resistance. I don't know if I'd call it, I'd call it resoluteness, I think, probably something like that, but what do I know? The third one, and there's only three, and you might have already guessed, it's going to start with an R. I'm always suspect of these people who write and they say, here's 10 things you need to learn, and they're all the same, they all begin with the same letter. And I say, something had to be contorted here. I just know it. You know, something had to be. Anyway, this last one is called, they call it reconfiguration. I kind of like that, actually. Reconfiguration. And I like the ability to convert distress and even suffering into opportunities for personal growth. Now that does take a reconfiguration of one's personality, doesn't it? And way of thinking. To convert distress and suffering into opportunities for personal growth? Whew. Okay. That sort of seems superhuman. But of course, that's what spirituality is. Well-known author, you've probably heard of this guy, Henry Nouwen, gives us a challenge when he talks about resilience, and I quote him, resilience to him is to pull our brokenness away from the shadow of the curse and put it under the light of blessing. Whoa. When something bad comes along in your life, you feel like you've been cursed. How did this happen? Who made this? Who did this to me? Why is this happening to me? We're regarding it all as a curse, that somehow this shouldn't have happened, or this shouldn't have happened to me. Could have happened to other people, but to me? And here Nouwen is saying to take it out of the confines of curse and put it on the pedestal. This is actually a blessing. Gee, Henry, you're not asking too much, are you? Here is where you can see resilience, he says, morph from a mere human capacity into a virtue, a gift from God that gives you spiritual healing power. So resilience, we're not talking about resilience on this human plane, we're talking about resilience on this spiritual plane, because it's a virtue, it's a gift from God. And what we're saying here is that I call resilience a mega virtue because it's an amalgam of many virtues. We're going to see that as we move along here today. Actually, you could say that about any virtue. If you could think of a virtue, you know what a Venn diagram is? You draw a circle and you say, well, here is hope. That's hope. Well, hope also is innervated, that circle of hope is innervated by other circles, like simplicity and wisdom and inspiration, and probably another dozen that's touching, in a sense, and helping to define what, in this case, hope is. Are you with me? And resilience is even more like that. It's even more like that. So resilience is not one of our 30 virtues in what my research found, but it's this mega virtue that takes in so many others, which we're going to get to even more. Okay. Resilience is to agelessness what stamina is to competitive sports. An undergirding power that allows your innate spiritual giftedness to prevail in spite of the obstacles that you may face. We all have problems, have you noticed? Some people have more than others. But it all sort of evens out, I think, over time. The question is not the fact, why did I get this problem? The question is, how am I going to deal with this? What am I going to make of this? And what is undergirding all of what we're saying today with this whole thing of resilience, the only way we're going to deal with this in a true way that is going to be additive rather than subtractive of our personality is through virtue. That's been the theme through our whole 30 talks, hasn't it? Virtue is the power that is invested. This is the giftedness that's within you. And we don't hear enough, in my estimation, of it in our worldly parlance out there. The virtue of resilience can be defined in many ways. Here are 7 descriptors I like correlated with their undergirding virtue. Resilience is, number 1, the capacity to heal and grow yet stronger. That's the virtue of strength. 2, the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, and/or threats. It's the virtue of courage. 3, resilience is the capacity to recover from wounds and rally from painful setbacks. It's the virtue of perseverance. Number 4, resilience is using the self-regulating tendencies and capabilities within the organism. I'm getting rather mortal here. That's the virtue of harmony. Resilience is the hardiness needed to change unfortunate situations into advantageous ones. That's tough. That's the virtue of transcendence. Resilience is redefining any brokenness as a blessing rather than as a curse, which I've already talked about before. That's the virtue of wisdom. And the 7th one, the final one in this little soliloquy, resilience is the inner power that allows your inner spirit to prevail in spite of all the obstacles that you may face. That's the virtue of hope. Now I'm moving to another topic I call spiritual harmony. The spiritual harmony of virtue in cultivating resilience. As I've mentioned, I call resilience a mega virtue because it holds profound significance in your spiritual journey in general and your healing journey in particular. Raise your hand if you do not need healing. All of us. I'm talking about the wide array of healing in not just body, but mind and sickness. Now, when I say healing with regard to body, I'm not talking about curing. Okay? Curing is a very different notion than healing. So we could have probably an entire seminar on those 2 words, but I'll spare you that today. Resilience empowers you to endure life's trials, recover from setbacks, and use these to strengthen your connection with God. Wow. I don't think that's the way the world sees setbacks. I can thank James and Evelyn Whitehead for writing in the inspiring book, The Virtue of Resilience. I'd recommend it to you. if you want to know more about resilience. These are an author team that have been writing for a long time, and I think they live in Chicago. That's neither here nor there, but they're good writers. I like them. These authors identified 12 virtues that they believe undergird resilience. I've taken the liberty here of underscoring these 12 virtues with resilience by joining each with the corresponding shadow to illuminate the Whitehead's list with a comparative dimension. Did that make sense? So here we go. There's 12 of them. And the first virtue they talk about is courage. Now, I know I've mentioned courage already, but that's from my own head. This is from their more august heads than mine. Anyway, and this isn't their, I didn't copy this from their book. I just took their 12 and remolded them, I guess. So courage serves as a foundation for resilience. Courage provides the healing strength to confront any adversity head on and take decisive action. Without courage, resilience would be difficult to cultivate, because courage provides the initial willingness to face hardships and uncertainty itself, the willingness to do this. So we're saying courage gives us the willingness. If we don't have courage, to some degree, then facing all these setbacks and hardships and everything, we can't even develop the willingness to be able to confront it. Courage provides the initial willingness to face it. Resilience builds upon courage by enabling you to bounce back from setbacks and disappointments. Courage then fortifies resilience. It offers the belief that setbacks are temporary and that you do possess the inner strength to endure and even thrive despite adverse circumstances. Courage gives resilience the necessary push to sustain your life journey under whatever unsteadying headwinds you may be facing. Now, the shadow of courage is timidity. That is, the absence of courage is timidity. So courage, again, is the grace power to venture forth even in the face of danger in spite of your fear. Usually the things we fear are the things we want to avoid. Have you noticed that? But courage gives this capacity to be able to face what you don't want to face, even though the fear is there. Courage doesn't dispel or erase the fear. Courage surmounts the fear. The fear is still there, but courage allows you to move beyond it. Timidity is the shadow of courage that causes you to languish in a tenacious tendency to avoid the difficult things you know you need to face squarely. Now, that's said pretty baldly on my part, to say it that, The difficult things you need to face squarely. We can all look into our hearts, minds, and souls and identify maybe the things we're avoiding and that we need to be able to face squarely. That's courage. To do that takes courage. And courage is really not, all virtue is not of this world. All virtue is here. It's in God's world. The second virtue that the Whiteheads identify is the virtue of patience. Patience enables us to surrender to the divine timing of your spiritual growth and healing. The divine timing. What the heck is that? God's always there. God's got your back. You're okay. You really have nothing to worry about here. Yes, there'll be pain. Yes, there'll be trials. Yes, there'll be all of that. But you're not alone. Patience teaches you to trust the wisdom of God and embrace hardships with equanimity, knowing that grace guides your path. Through patience, you deepen your connection to God's divine plan. and experience resilience as a spiritual journey of acceptance and surrender. And I always want to qualify acceptance, because I think most people see acceptance as submission or resignation, and it ain't that. Not as a virtue. Acceptance basically means to embrace. So what are you embracing? Well, in this case, you're embracing the hardship, not because you want to wallow in it, but so you can move beyond it. Because if you don't embrace it, you can't move beyond it. It's easy for me to sit here and say that. Again, to do it, I can't do it. Only the virtue of patience can do it. Shadow of patience is impulsivity, to be impulsive. Patience is the grace power to enter into and remain in that still center point of tranquility in you, regardless of any disturbing or irritating circumstances. Its shadow is impulsivity, which pushes you only to react and not respond. You hastily jump rather than thoughtfully consider. It's a big difference. Do you react to life or do you respond to life? Without virtue, you're going to react. You're only going to react, because that's what we humans do. We react rather than respond. It's a big difference. We could spend a whole seminar just talking about the difference between those two words. The third virtue the Whiteheads identify is perseverance. I know I've talked about perseverance already today, but we'll take a deeper dive here. Perseverance is an act of devotion and surrender to God's divine will. Now, do you ever think of perseverance as that? An act of devotion and surrender to God's divine will. It is an unwavering commitment to walk the path of what I call right-mindedness, which is the opposite of wrong-mindedness. How do we distinguish? Right-mindedness is when you're in your virtues, especially your signature spiritual virtues. Wrong-mindedness is when you're in shadows and compulsions. You can't be right-minded in your shadows and compulsions. By persevering, you align yourself with divine purpose, finding resilience as you remain steadfast in your sacred journey that we call life. Giving up is the shadow of perseverance. Perseverance is what I call your spiritual grit, or grace, or power to keep going and going and going, to remain centered and on task. Its shadow of giving up pushes you too easily to become exhausted, disheartened. Well, disenfranchised with God, how's that one? and to too soon give up to your vulnerabilities. The fourth virtue that Whiteheads give us is the virtue of peace. Inner peace is a divine gift, enabling you to seek solace in the embrace of the divine presence within you. The divine presence is embracing you always. Are we responding? Are we aware of that? That's what our faith teaches us. It enables you to face adversity with serenity, trusting that God's divine love orchestrates every moment of your spiritual evolution. That's an interesting notion. God's divine love orchestrates every moment of your spiritual evolution. And if you're not spiritually evolving, that means God's not there. Well, God is there, but we're shadowing and compulsing God away. Through peace, you find resilience in the assurance that God is always with you, always guiding, always comforting along your spiritual path, sacred path. The shadow of peace is contention. Peace is the grace power to experience God's celestial quiet as it saturates your heart in its sure calmness. Its shadow of contention subverts peace by contorting you to become too easily agitated, divisive, oppositional, and angry. Where there's anger, there's no peace. And where there's peace, there's no anger. The fifth virtue is faith that the Whiteheads give us. Faith is a sacred bond between your soul and God. Well, that's pretty straightforward. Faith is part of the bedrock of resilience. Faith is the assurance that God's love and wisdom envelops and sustains you, even in your darkest hours. Faith sustains you through life's trials, deepening your spiritual connection and unveiling the transformative power of resilience. The shadow of faith is disloyalty. Faith is the grace power of fidelity that enables you to know without question that God's guiding hand is always there to help you back to your secure spiritual center, the immortal diamond in you, as Father Richard Rohr calls it. Without faith, the shadow of disloyalty scatters your thoughts, confusing and dividing your mind. Scattered. Where are we going? What's happening here? Where's the rock? Where's the immortal diamond with the many facets? I like that notion of the diamond within you because the diamond has many facets, and I see each one of those facets as another virtue. And as you move a diamond, a different facet will sparkle in the light, and you move it and it goes just sparkle, 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 sparkle. The sixth one that the Whiteheads, sixth virtue the Whiteheads talk about is adaptability. In the divine dance of life, adaptability is an undergirding motive power enabling your surrender to God's holy plan for your life. Adaptability allows you to surrender, which is the goal of our spiritual life, is to surrender. By embracing change with grace and humility, you show your willingness to flow harmoniously with the currents of God's divine will. Currents of will. Through adaptability, you discover resilience as the divine grace, guiding you through every twist and turn of life. The shadow of adaptability is rigidity. The grace power to know that adaptability is the grace power to know that you can change, and furthermore, that God expects you to change. Duh. I think we call that growth. Spiritual growth is change. Otherwise, you can slide into stagnation and immobility, becoming overly strict or harsh in your views. That's called the shadow of rigidity. Overly strict and harsh in your views. The seventh virtue of the 12 is empathy, as far as the Whiteheads are concerned. And empathy is the virtue strength within your heart that propels you to connect with the sacred essence in others. I love that. Empathy is the virtue strength within your heart that propels you to connect with the sacred essence in others. You are my brother. You are my sister. You are my child of God. What is in me is in you. How can we be different? You may have different ideas about a lot of things, but we're the same, regardless of, whatever differences that the world may see. The world is very good, have you noticed, about dividing people up. Have you noticed that? God is exactly the opposite. We're all one. I mean, that sounds so simplistic to say, and yet its profundity is just amazing. Empathy nurtures compassion and fosters that important sense of oneness that we all share in Jesus. We are one in Jesus. Through empathic connections, you strengthen your spiritual bonds, finding resilience as you draw upon the divine love that unites us all. Divine love unites us all. It's really the ultimate uniter, isn't it? I mean, we're all Americans, and that defines us. We're all living at this particular point in time on this place called Earth that unites us. But the thing that is immortally unites us is that we are children of God. We're all the same. The shadow of empathy is obtuseness. Empathy is the grace power to fully be present and exquisitely sensitive to the needs of others and to your own needs as well. Can you be empathic with yourself? Yes. Yes. Can you but you have to know yourself to be empathic with yourself. If we don't know ourselves, how can we be empathic with ourselves? Because we don't know ourselves. You see, it's sort of, you have to have a relationship with yourself. And to have a relationship with yourself, you have to know yourself. Well, how do you know yourself? Our whole 30 lectures here are all about being better know yourself on a spiritual level through these things called virtues. You know yourself better here. Know your 6 spiritual strengths, the virtues, and you know yourself at a much different, deeper level than you had before. Clearly. God has directed me for over 40 years to be, in this honored seat of being a counselor to other people, with other people, I should say. And really, what is my job? Empathic connection. That's the job. Why? To get to know you better. Not so I can know you better, but so that in the conversation that we uncover new facets of your life, the diamond within you that maybe you didn't know you had. It's not that I have any special powers. Empathy is a spiritual strength. In psychology school, they try to teach you empathy. Well, it's nice, there are particulars about empathy, but really, when you boil it down, empathy is of God. It's a virtue. The shadow of obtuseness creates emotional distance. That cold place where you can become callous and emotionally blank. I'm on a campaign. Actually, I'm on a number of campaigns, but one of my private campaigns is, I think that in grade school, which I consider grades 1 to 8, we ought to have 10 feelings, words, vocabulary. And so in first grade, you learn 10 words that describe feelings. And in second grade, you learn 10 more. And in third grade, you learn 10 more. You get it, so by the time you get through grade school, you have 80 words that can describe feelings, right? Why do I say that? Because a new patient will come in and say, well, hey, Frank, how do you feel? Blank. He has no words to describe it. So when you have no words to describe feelings, you are obtuse, right? Because if you can't describe words for yourself, how can you describe words, and how can you connect on a feelings level? Anyway, you can see I'm on a campaign. The next virtue, the 8th virtue, is the virtue of hope. Hope is the divine spark that ignites your soul, reminding you of the eternal presence of the divine. That's a different slant on the definition of hope. Hope reminds you that the divine is present within you. It's there. Oh. It is the beacon of God's light that shines through the darkness. That's hope. Offering you reassurance that God's plan is unfolding perfectly. This is God's plan? Really? That's the human side saying that. I mean, it's hard to think about that. I know. Through hope, you experience resilience as the divine promise of brighter days ahead, even in the midst of life's challenges, toil, and disappointments. The shadow of hope is despair. Hope is the grace power to live in the deep conviction that there is no stronger power in the cosmos than God's love. That's hope. There's no power stronger than hope, than love. The shadow of despair is the absence of hope. Without hope, you can easily slip into, well, you name it, irritability, disillusionment, mental and emotional weariness, depression, and the list goes on. Without hope, where are you? The 9th one is wisdom. Wisdom is holy insight bestowed upon you by God. That's wisdom. Holy insight. How did you know that? I don't know how I know it. I just know it. That's holy insight. Wisdom is divine knowing that transcends human understanding. Wisdom is divine knowing that transcends human understanding, guiding your choices in your spiritual growth journey. Through wisdom, you can discern the lessons in every life experience. Did you get that? The lessons rather, in every life experience. Whether the world regards them as good or otherwise. Doesn't matter what the world regards them as. Resilience beckons you to a sacred pilgrimage of spiritual growth and inner healing. Shadow of wisdom is its insufficiency and a sense of inadequacy. It's kind of a mixture of that. I'm not good enough, and I'm not sufficient enough. That's basically what the shadow of wisdom is about. Wisdom is the grace power necessary to focus your thoughts on your highest purpose, that is God's purpose for your life. What is God's purpose for your life? Gee, why don't you ask some easy questions, Richard? Without wisdom, you can lapse into the shadow of personal insufficiency, causing you to feel chronically inadequate. Psychology calls that low self-esteem. I call that, and I wrote a book on low self-esteem. It's okay. But it causes you to feel chronically inadequate. God doesn't make junk. You can't be chronically inadequate. The 10th one is vision, virtue. Whitehead say vision is a virtue. In the divine tapestry of life, the virtue of vision gives you a glimpse of your soul's purpose, the divine gift of revelation. What's it all about, Alfie? Divine revelation. You need some. Wisdom aligns you with God's divine plan. Vision aligns you with God's divine plan, guiding you toward your spiritual destiny. Now there's a nice phrase, spiritual destiny. What's my spiritual destiny? Through vision, you can perceive resilience as a fulcrum point of God's sacred design, leading you to transcendence of worldliness and union with God. Boy, there's another mouthful. Transcendence of worldliness? But I'm living in this world. How can I transcend worldliness? Well, that's your goal. That's it. Turn off the news. Transcendence of worldliness and union with God. The shadow of vision is blindedness. Vision, is the grace power to see God's divine presence in all things. God, everywhere. All things. And in all people, including yourself. Without vision, you're blinded in darkness and can easily stumble over the same obstacles that you stumbled over yesterday and the yesterday before that. And you know what I'm going to say now. The yesterday before that. The 11th virtue supporting resilience is the virtue of strength. Divine strength is the fortitude that you receive from God. The virtue of strength empowers you to endure the trials and tribulations of life, knowing that God's grace carries you through every challenge. Through divine strength, you experience resilience as the divine presence within you. Oh, to live in that divine presence within me, Lord. Enabling you and me to rise above adversity and emerge victorious in your spiritual journey. I don't think I'm going to use that word victorious because it implies tension. Anyway, maybe I will. I don't know. The shadow of strength is impotence, having no power. I'm impotent. Strength is the grace power for constructive growth. Strength gives you the ability to withstand temptation so that you can walk straight and tall in the Lord. Strength enhances your capacity for sustained exertion. Its shadow of impotence demoralizes you. You feel rudderless, incapable, distressed, and ultimately helpless. So many people I'll see, I'll say, well, Dr. Johnson, what you're saying is hard. It's hard. And I would say, yeah, it's definitely hard, but you're not helpless. The 12th virtue here is the virtue of humor. How nice. With celestial vision, humor is the divine laughter that echoes through the cosmos. Can you hear it? Listen deeply. You can hear it. It's the joy that springs from your soul, reminding you of God's lightheartedness amidst your trials here on this earth. Through humor, you find resilience as a divine dance of joy that carries you through the ups and downs of life. Shadow of humor is lamentation, to lament. While the grace power of humor includes your ability to laugh at your foibles, quirks, inconsistencies, and inadequacies, the shadow of lamentation pushes you towards falling into criticism and condemnation of others, as well as self-criticism and self-condemnation. I know there's no one here that has ever criticized themselves. Or maybe you think you need criticism to be able to get going. You're really messed up there, Richard. I don't know if that's criticism or a statement of fact. Lamentation focuses on what's wrong with you, with others, and with the world. And do we live in a world that has gotten very adroit at pointing out what's wrong and lost our capabilities of pointing out what's good? That's not a political statement. The social and emotional consequences of such fatalism in your mind is toxic. A diet of fear and avoidance of fear is toxic. Because what does it do? It makes you put armor on. You put armor, so you're armored against all of this fear and all of this, and you kind of steep in this toxicity yourself. I do the same thing. So the interplay of virtue forms a divine symphony. I love that. That awakens and fortifies the mega virtue of resilience. By nurturing these virtues in your heart, mind, and soul, you pursue oneness with God. How can you not pursue oneness with God? Because virtue only comes from God. It doesn't come from the world. We kind of anyway, I won't go there. Oneness with God. And you embrace the divine journey of growth, love, and holy surrender, finding profound spiritual meaning and divine grace in your quest for closer union with God. Now, I'd like to end the recording with the second part of the prayer that I handed out to you, because I actually think, and I think I tried to do this, or God tried to show me this, that these two paragraphs here kind of sum up what these 30 times we've been together we're trying to say. So here we go. I am a Christian. I can be no other, because Christ lives in me as my true identity. I can be but this. My true essence is the presence of Christ in me. I am one with Christ, who is of the Father. We are one. Therefore, we are together. My truest presence is of God. And this presence is my true self. That is what we all call love, which is most practically manifested here on this plane as virtue. These spiritual strengths, these virtues, are what drives me, what defines me, and which drives my purpose here on this earth and throughout eternity. I don't think we're going to drop off virtues. We won't need virtues anymore when we leave this plane and hopefully go to heaven, whatever that is. I think heaven's going to be awash in virtues. So you better learn how to swim. I am made by love, of love, and my only goal is to expand love. The best way I can achieve this goal is by spreading the virtue strengths with which I have been gifted. Make no mistake. Lord, help me and heal me by keeping me ever awake to this happy endeavor of continuously planting the seeds of your love in the fertile yet thirsty fields I encounter here. Help me be ever mindful of and faithful to this holy quest of holding up the light of your love wherever I go and shine it upon whomever I meet. Help me, Lord, to be resolute and resilient in this sacred adventure of solemn yet vibrant purpose that drives my soul and reverberates through your grand universal creation. Amen.